This is the Skeptical Student Show, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
You can always listen to the episode on Fast Forward and follow the podcast to never miss new episodes. And while you're at it, don't forget to rate the podcast a 5-star.
Hello everyone, I am Gavish, here to welcome you to yet another episode of the Skeptical Student Show. According to a 2019 UNESCO report, almost 1 in every 3 students has been bullied by their peers at school at least once. This statistic doesn't really come as a surprise, as we have all faced bullying in some form or the other. But how many of us have fought against it? Today, I have invited the youngest guest yet, who has raised her voice against bullying and still continues the fight against it. Meet Anushka Jolly, the 13-year-old 8th grader who is the founder and CEO of Inner Arc BlockTech Private Limited, Anti-Bullying Squad, and the Kavach mobile app. She is passionate about writing, sociology, and entrepreneurship. And fun fact, she is also on the Shark Tank India edition. So, welcome to the show, Anushka, and you certainly fit the definition of a skeptical student.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over. I'm Anushka, and I think you've covered everything there is. I actually started my first mental health startup in 2018 by the name of Anti-Bullying Squad. And currently, I recently received funding on Shark Tank India for my mobile app Kavach, and it's yet to be launched very soon.
All the best for that. And we all know how common bullying is, and most of us have already faced the brunt of it.
Blast from the past segment.
So, how about you share with us your experience with the same and tell us about the fight against it?
Definitely. So, I actually have been on both sides of the bullying situation. I have experienced it as a victim and I have witnessed it as a bystander. And both were very, very negative experiences. And I think both of them kind of inspired me or motivated me to stand up against bullying and make a change basically. So I first got bullied in third grade for about a year, and basically the bullies were people I thought were my closest friends, but I didn't know they were actually emotionally manipulating me and using the means of relational bullying to lower my self-esteem and make me feel sad and lonely. And it broke me really. I wasn't able to make friends. I wasn't myself that year and even the year after that. But personally, I deem myself kind of lucky that I was able to overcome it. But that's not the case for like a lot of kids, especially at such a young age to go through that. So that's one thing. And I even witnessed it. This is actually the incident that kind of sparked that light bulb in my brain and inspired me to take action against it. And this is when I saw a 6-year-old girl getting verbally abused and bullied. And looking at her, at the bullies torturing her, it reminded me of my personal terrible experience. And that moment I knew I had to do something about it. So I stood up for her. But other than that, after I think that experience, I decided that I want to take action. And so I decided to do it in an entrepreneurial way because that was something I was good at and that was something I was interested in. So that's basically the story of how I got bullied.
Oh my god, that is impressive, and thank you so much for describing it so vividly. Now, if I were to talk about my experience with bullying, I haven't really been subjected to severe bullying, but that doesn't mean that I have not encountered bullies in my life. So, body shaming is one common form of bullying, and I've been casually advised to put on some weight by various people throughout my life, be it family, friends, colleagues, acquaintances, even teachers for that matter. But with the passage of time, I've turned tone deaf to all these voices. And I also think people tend to bring you down by mocking you when they actually see that you are above them.
Right, yeah.
And pointing out to insecurities in a way makes them feel compensated in their own egoistic self.
Yeah.
And all my life, not to praise myself, I think I was better than the lot, and that is why I was targeted. And even after coming to college, now, because this is the most recent example, I think I would like to throw some light upon it. An anonymous confession was made in my name, which was hateful and which targeted me in more than one ways. So the best part about all of this was that there were actually people who checked in on me after this incident. The fact that people around me started commenting on that post that this is not a confession, this is bullying, this is hateful, this is not acceptable, we want you to take this down, that in some or the other way gave me happiness. And not to say that it affected me, I mean, this is not the first time I'm facing something as hateful as this. What actually made me happy was the fact that there were people around me who took a stand, who raised their voice. And I think this is what we all should strive for, to create a safe environment for one another.
I agree.
And I think if even Virat Kohli is being bullied, I think anyone can be bullied. And bullying goes beyond school, beyond college. There's adult bullying as well. And if you are being bullied, I think I would want you to consider it as a green signal to all your efforts.
I completely agree with you, especially when you said that bullies, they only target you because you're better than them. And that's the thing. Bullies, they are themselves insecure and they lack validation. So they seek validation by putting down other people. But we all know that किसी को नीचा दिखाने से कोई बड़ा नहीं हो सकता. And just because you bully and shame another person, it doesn't help you rise higher. Still be that villain and that horrible person, not only to others but even to yourself. And I think that experience you shared, that's amazing. You had a support group and people who could point that out that was wrong and like support you and help you. I think that is very important, that we form a community, this generation, that we come together against it, because I think that's what will really make a difference.
Yes, and I think I wouldn't have talked about this because I don't want to acknowledge it anymore in my life, because I don't want to give the bully what they want, the attention for which they crave. But I think what needs to be acknowledged is the efforts of the people who actually stood up for me, which I wasn't even expecting, to be honest. I think the anonymous confession maker was too insecure of the fact that someone was comfortable in their own skin and still doing better than them.
Right.
So, moving on to our next segment.
Problem pinpoint and seeking solutions segment.
And talking about the problems. Why do you think there is a need in people to bully?
So, bullying primarily happens for 6 reasons. Firstly, the bullies want power. People, they want to feel powerful and in control in situations because they might not feel that power in their personal life. So, they try to obtain that same thing in social situations. They want to be popular. So, people believe that they can gain popularity by bullying somebody, especially because this trope is, I think, represented very, very heavily in media. And they think the witnesses of the bullying, they see that the bully is strong and powerful, and they instantly start respecting the bully. Third is they want payback. Now, in a lot of instances, bullies have actually been victims of bullying in the past. So they retaliate. They seek revenge for their suffering and take their anger out on an innocent person or the bully itself. These bullies actually experience a sense of relief afterwards. Fourth is that the bullies are going through something. So usually people who come from abusive homes, their like violent behavior is modeled for them, it's normalized for them. And also people with low self-esteem, again, as I spoke about before, they bully others to feel better about themselves. And this is actually one of the most prominent reasons somebody bullies. Fifth is they want some entertainment. People who are bored and looking for some excitement feel that bullying might spice up their life. And lastly, sixth is prejudice. People start targeting those of a certain race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or body type. And it's gradually becoming okay to casually bully others by targeting these aspects because of the deep rooted inequality and discrimination in our society. But we both know that this is wrongful and this obviously shouldn't take place.
Yes, I agree with you. And the fact that you spoke about bullying being okay, I think the case should be the exactly opposite of that. And even if the bully wants to gain attention or entertainment, I don't think bullying is the best way to do so. And I think you would agree to that.
Correct.
Now, having known about the psyche behind a bully's mind, what do you think it leads to for the bully and the victim to bully someone?
So, usually people who I've met who I've talked to about bullying, they kind of assume that only the victim is affected. But that's untrue. Even the bully is affected. So that's why bullying is horrible, because it leads to negative things for people on all sides of the situation. So first let's talk about the victim. So the victim, it leads to them having low self-esteem, self-disgust. They can have issues building relationships and talking about things. They may think that seeking help in violent situations just makes the whole thing worse, even though that's not the case. And victims, they may start performing poorly at school, they start to feel lonely and misunderstood, they develop trust issues or insecurities, or they develop long lasting mental or social disorders such as depression or post traumatic stress disorder or anxiety. They might have trouble sleeping or change their eating patterns. They can lose interest in things that have been enjoyable to them before, and they can even face physical difficulties such as migraines and frequent pain. But I'd like to talk a little bit about my personal experience from when I got bullied and how it affected me. What I did basically to avoid the bullying, to avoid that kind of social scenario that was taking place in my life, I just sort of buried myself in my work and I started cramming, which is, of course, not a healthy thing to do. There are two sides. Victims can also lose interest in studies or they can start cramming. When it comes to bullies, bullies face issues in building and maintaining healthy relationships. They can develop anger issues where violence may become a key way to conduct oneself, and they are very, very likely to abuse alcohol or drugs or medications more often than others. And they can get involved in fights and crime, and some more effects can be increased lying, a lack of empathy, depression, or panic disorders. And both the bully or the victim, they can face adult post bullying syndrome, which is APBS, and where they kind of relive their traumatic experiences. The most dramatic consequence is bullycide, which is suicide because of a bullying issue, which is obviously like extremely sad.
Yes, all of this is extremely tragic to hear. And I think from what I could pick up from your points was that bullying and mental health go hand in hand. And about mental health, we did an episode recently where we also talked about cutting people off. So I think people should be equipped with this skill to cut off the bullies or the people who affect their mental health.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, talking about bullying, it has various subsets. And since today everything has moved online due to COVID, I think we cannot go without talking about cyberbullying. And with cyberbullying, we'll also talk about the ways to combat it. So, what do you think about that?
Sounds good. So, cyberbullying, basically to describe it, it's just using electronics or the internet to bully a person. It's usually taken lightly, but it's actually a punishable offense under the Information Technology Act 2000 and the Indian Penal Code. So, cyberbullying can be messaging somebody mean things, harassing a person online, posting personal videos and images, imitating somebody online, and more. Cyberbullying is actually a horrible, horrible thing. It's worse than traditional bullying because here the bully constantly has contact with the victim. For example, I'm getting bullied, I go to school, but I come home so I can sort of avoid it. But here I have my device 24/7. So the bully can, no matter what, he can bully me. There are two types of cyberbullying solutions. Firstly, precautionary measures, which is something everybody on the internet should take. We should not share any personal information or content with anybody, keep secure passwords, communicate with known people only, be careful while posting personal content, and definitely set up an antivirus software. One that I would highly recommend is Norton. We should never ever post anything hurtful or something that puts somebody at risk, like their personal information. We shouldn't create fake profiles, believe anything we read without verifying it through a trusted source, course, leave our accounts unattended after logging in, and open suspicious links or attachments. And secondly, the second type of solution is what to do if we get cyberbullied. So the first thing to do is obviously to stay calm and not panic, because there is help always. We need to first understand the situation. What is going on? How is it cyberbullying? And take screenshots and evidence if you can. And do not respond, because that's what the cyberbully wants. It's for you to show a reaction, and responding will only make the situation worse. The golden rule: just block and report. Report the hate comments, block the bully, and if it gets out of hand or genuine help is needed, you can contact 1098, the 24-hour phone outreach service for children.
Points well made. And in reference to the blocking point, I think Instagram has launched a very commendable feature wherein you can block the bully's account and all the accounts that they may create in the future with just one click.
Right.
To move forward, I would like to hear from you. What do you think would be the 5 signs which indicate that you are being bullied? Because people might just not realize that they are being bullied, and once they realize that they are, it might just be too late.
Yeah, I have actually come across a lot of situations where people don't even realize they're getting bullied, but they do feel hurt and their mental health is affected. So, 5 signs that you're getting bullied. Firstly, if your feelings are hurt by the situation. And this can also be like physically hurt if it's physical bullying or physical abuse. If it's happening more than once, like multiple times. And if the bully's actions might be intentional. Like, for example, in physical bullying, if somebody hits you, it can't be unintentional, right? They can't hit you accidentally. But if it's verbal bullying, then there might be somebody who will say something intentionally and somebody who might say something unintentionally. So it's very important to be able to draw that line and understand when somebody is actually bullying you or when somebody is messing around and crossing the line, maybe. Changes in eating and sleeping habits. So this is like, as I talked about, an effect of bullying. If you see this happening whilst all the other things that I list, it's probably bullying. And lastly, a decrease in self esteem. So, those are the 5 signs that you might be getting bullied.
Thank you so much for pointing them out. And also, talking about the knots of bullying, sometimes there is a tendency in people to indulge into bullying just because they want to save themselves. So they get engaged with the bullies and go on to bully someone else just to save their own skin. So, what do you think about that?
I understand that it can be nerve wracking as a bystander because you're so afraid that they might start targeting you. It's morally incorrect to do that because there's some sort of fear that you'll either lose your social standing or your friendship with the bully or something or the other. But I think it's very, very important to empathize with the person who is going through whatever, like, the bullying. Like, for example, what if you were the person? What if you were getting bullied? We want to prevent that. We want to create a society where there are upstanders rule, kind people rule, not bullies. And if we stay quiet, we are just as bad as the bullies. We are just giving them power. And if we indulge in it, support them, that's even worse. That's like being an assistant to the bully.
Yes, exactly. And I think it would still take some guts to stand up to the bully and disassociate yourself from them. But I think it would be worth it.
Right.
It would be worth it all at the end.
Correct.
Now, as we are always told to look towards the positive side of things. So, I know this might sound silly, but do you think there can be any positives of bullying?
It's a very, very controversial topic because, some people, they've been bullied and then they say things like, I have emerged stronger from bullying and bullying has made me stronger. But that's not an excuse to normalize bullying or think that it's like positive because it makes you stronger. That's not the case with every single victim. And really, it just causes mental health issues, it just causes trauma because kids are supposed to grow up in a healthy environment and bullying, it doesn't allow that. So I don't think personally that there are any positives at all. Yeah, a lot of successful people, they have been bullied in the past, and they have gone through that criticism, that rejection. There is a difference between preparing yourself for the adversities of the world and bullying. Criticism and harsh comments, they are like constructive. That's not bullying.
All right. Now, talking specifically about the solutions, what do you think can be the possible ways of battling bullying?
What to do if I'm getting bullied? Firstly, you have to know what is happening. So you can identify like what form of bullying it is, whether it's actually bullying or not, and who is bullying you, and are there any bystanders. Secondly, feel. Usually, when people get bullied, they tend to bury their feelings and not talk about them and avoid it. But even though that feels easier at the time, it's not. Hiding your feelings will just make the situation worse. And it is scientifically proven that talking about your feelings, it helps. So talk about them to your friends or family or somebody you trust, or a journal, or you can express yourself. And talking to somebody might take some time, so don't rush it if you're not ready. Thirdly, you need to stay calm and not let the bullies get to you. So you already know that bullying, it can lead to a low self-esteem. So you need to remember to practice self-love, and you can do that by practicing self-care. Be kind to yourself. Learn that nobody deserves to be treated that way. Bullying is not okay, and you can do something about it. Lastly, take action and stop the bullying. Well, the first and foremost thing to do is to report it. You can report it anonymously through the Kavach app, which I'm working on right now, or you can even talk to a school teacher or a trusted adult or a friend about what you're going through. Secondly, you can form a support group. If you have people who trust you, if you have people who defend you and be there for you, bullies are less likely to target you because they know that you have this kind of shield around you of people who love you and support you. That's a support group. And lastly, confronting the bully, even though that's not a preferred solution, but if you feel you can, you could do this. Avoid this in situations like physical bullying to avoid getting hurt. So you need to stay as calm as possible because the bullies, they want a nervous reaction or breakdown from you. And if you don't give them that, they will simply not care. Stay confident, look them in the eye, or say something like stop it, or tell them that it's not okay with what's happening. And it's very important to walk away and not react or respond after standing up for yourself, because that's what the bully wants. And you may also walk away if the bully ever approaches you. You're not entitled to respond to the bully or have a conversation with the bully. Remember that you and your body language should show that you don't really care what the bully thinks, because ultimately that's what they want.
Great, I agree with all the points. And referring to the support group point, what role do you think parents, friends, and people around you play when you are under the threat of bullying? For example, in my case, when people stood up for me, they made the admin or built pressure on the admin to delete the confession even before me taking an action. So, what do you think about that?
So, what you spoke about, I think a support group is very important. When you are not in the state to take action, they can do it for you.
And what kind of role do you think parents can play?
Parents, I think, are one of the most important like roles, because they can actually prevent the bullying before it even happens. They can kind of shape a child into believing that bullying is not okay and that we should always be kind to people and we should stay safe on the internet. So things like this. But also, when it comes to stopping bullying, they can also play a huge role in that because they have authority. So they can talk to the teachers about it, they can talk to the school about it, they can report it, they can talk to their own child about it. That's something that they can do.
Yes, very well said. And like we spoke earlier about bullying being common, another subset of bullying is ragging, which is especially common in the medical and engineering colleges. But that is exactly why we are having this conversation, right? To change it, to change this tradition or to break this tradition and say that no, this is not normative.
Right.
So, how do you think we can break away from this?
We can break away from ragging. So, just to give a little bit of context, ragging is basically abuse, humiliation, or harassment of new entrants or junior students students by senior students. And it's a criminal offense as per the Supreme Court verdict, and it's an offense under the Penal Code and Section 116 of the Karnataka Education Act. Honestly, like when I first heard of ragging, it didn't make any sense to me, because imagine defining authority by age. That just made me lose brain cells.
Age is just a number, right? You are the personification of that.
Age is just a number.
Yes.
And actually, I would also like to share an experience. The other day, I was having a conversation with one of my uncles, and he talking about ragging, and he was talking about how he had this friend who went to a university, and he would speak so casually about ragging. He would normalize it so much, like, oh yeah, this happened, they did this, they played this prank, they did this, and it was like torturous, bad, horrible pranks, but he was okay with it somehow. He normalized it. It was okay for him, which is the worst part. I think the first step ending a problem is calling it out. So I think we can actually end ragging once we recognize it as a problem. So we can basically have anti-ragging squads in different colleges. We can have teachers speak about it, students speak about it. We can have more diversity. I think all of those little things, and education and awareness, they all can end ragging entirely in India.
Yes, and recently there has been a lot of vigilance shown by UGC against its anti-ragging movement. So you are still in school, but once you go to college, you'll be asked to fill an anti-ragging form, which is a compulsory form to be filled to take admission. Why don't we extend this effort to even schools as well, in the form of anti-bullying forms?
It's very progressive. And the anti-bullying forms thing, I think we can do that after the students reach a particular age and they actually understand bullying. We can definitely implement that.
Response segment.
So, moving forward, we will be discussing upon a response. So, the question at hand was, oftentimes there is a dilemma in the mind of the one being bullied whether to ignore or report the matter. So, the response which I had received was, honestly, I believe that it's really up to that person whether he or she wants to take it up. There are several people who don't want to give toxicity a way to enter their lives, and that's why they don't report it. However, there are some people who want to report it but don't have the courage to do so. So, for such people, we need to give them support and make them realize that there is someone with whom they can always talk. So, do you think this is the right approach?
Um, no. I think bullying has to be reported. Whatever is happening, it has to be reported, because whatever is reported, it can be corrected. And see, I'm not asking like the victim to reveal their identity if they're not comfortable. So anonymous reporting, 100% something that should take place, and it's something that I'm personally also working on with the Kavach app. We should never ignore it, because ignoring it will just make the situation worse. We've always said that the bully will just get bored and move on, but the bully won't do that. The bully will just be motivated to get a response, get a reaction out of you, and that's what happens. So definitely ignoring it is not an option. We have to take action, we have to report it, and we have to then take action and obviously end the bullying.
Moral of the episode.
We are moving towards the end of this episode, and now I would want to hear from you, as a part of your last words on this podcast, the moral of this episode.
I think the moral of this episode would just be, let's report bullying. Let's give the victim the strength and the abilities and the tools to report bullying. Do not ignore it. Do not normalize it. Do not trivialize it. It's an actual problem that is affecting millions of kids across the globe, and we have to report it and take action upon it.
Great.
Supplementary segment.
And as a part of our last segment, wherein we give something back to the listeners, I would like to mention a helpline number which would help anyone who is suffering from bullying. So, this is a helpline number by UGC, or University Grants Commission. The National Anti Ragging Helpline number goes like 1800 180-552. Thank you so much, Anushka, for agreeing to do this and becoming a part of this podcast. I was indeed inspired by you, and I hope our listeners were too.
Thank you. It means a lot, and I'm glad I got this opportunity to talk more about bullying and spread more awareness about it.
Yes, and if any assistance is required from my side, I would be happy to help. And for the listeners, if you think we missed a point, or if you would want to contribute to the response segment, or if you would simply want to stay connected, you can follow me on Instagram. I am called Gavish Raptor with GAVISH_RAPTOR. Anushka, what can be the social handles through which the listeners can reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on Instagram, _anti-bullying squad. They can reach out to me on email, antibullying squad11@gmail.com, even on Facebook, anti-bullying squad 2, and then on Twitter, anti-bullying squad. And also on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, so Anushka Jolly, you can look me up and I'll be there.
Great. Thank you so much for becoming a part, Anushka. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. And don't forget to tune in next week for a fresh episode.
You were listening to the Skeptical Student Show by Gavish Raptor, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.